And as a result of those adoptions, I'm a different man than what I would have been without it.
Mm-hmm.
I can see every child as my child now. You don't have to gin up sympathy and empathy and love and really a desire to use your place in life to try to make a difference.
Don't Hide the Scars, a weekly podcast focused on addiction and recovery. Created by the nonprofit PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, and founded by Flindt Anderson.
California Assembly member representing the 23rd District, Jim Patterson. Thank you for joining founder of Parents and Addicts in Need, Flindt Anderson, and myself, Jason LaChance, on the Don't Hide the Scars podcast.
Yeah. How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing
We're glad
good.
you're here.
Doing good. Always, Flindt, to be with you is a real joy. You know, we have had a professional relationship for a long time, but also a personal relationship.
Yes.
And you have been instrumental in helping our family work through an addiction issue with one of our loved ones. It happens to everybody if you're not careful.
Yeah.
And the good news in all of this, Flindt, is complete recovery, over a year and a half, maybe going on 2 years without any relapse, reunited with the family,
right.
and we are all going to be around our Christmas dinner table together, and we are going to be celebrating. And I want to thank you publicly and on the podcast. You know, I called you at a moment when we were in a very difficult circumstance where our loved one was on the street, was essentially homeless, was estranged from us and from the family. And I didn't know exactly what to do, and I called you, and you answered the phone like that. We had a conversation, and I followed your advice. And you know what? That ended up being the turning point.
Yeah.
It really did. I was tough as nails with him.
Yes, you were.
But I also was saying, you can be better than that, man. And there's a lot of people that are going to help you do it.
Mm-hmm.
But you are about to lose everything you love. And you show up on our front porch, homeless, and no one set of clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, I needed you, and you were there.
Oh, thank you.
And you gave me some great advice. We did engage his parents, and that was part of the problem. A lot of times, moms and dads think, well, that's our boy. I mean, he doesn't really mean it, and we're just going to love him through it and all that. And as I mentioned to you, here their son has been weeks on the streets of Fresno, and they were at their vacation home.
Right.
And I called him up that night, and I said, you get down here.
Mm-hmm.
You own this. This is your son. And they did. And there was a little bit of a wrestling match, but then they did get him to the rehabilitation. He has gone through that. I think it's like 2 years now, something like that.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's 2 years.
And, I mean, talk about a Christmas gift.
Right. Right.
And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to be with you today, and to partly to say thank you, but also to say your influence has really helped me as a member of the legislature. We've got a fentanyl bill that we've introduced, and that's the Fentanyl Dealers Accountability Act. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yes. Yeah.
But also, there's a lot of activity, both by Democrats and Republicans up in Sacramento. I'm co-authoring half a dozen bills in the fentanyl space.
Right.
I think we've gotten to a point where those in the California legislature have had enough of fentanyl and are searching for ways to hold the dealers accountable, but also to warn, teach, help people identify the problems, putting Narcan in places where our kids can have it and have enough of it. So there's a lot of legislation working its way through.
Yeah.
And I really, and you've been on the forefront of this here with PAIN, and I'm just grateful to be with you, and thank you for the invite.
Thanks, Jim. You know what? That does my heart good. You know?
Yeah, Jim, to start off, I didn't bring any tissues here. I'm like, okay, hold it back. All right.
Yeah, no, that is such great news around this time of the year.
We're not special.
Right.
Yeah.
We're typical.
Typical. Yeah.
This is how dangerous this addiction is, and whether it's alcohol or opioids or the fentanyl and all of that. And it's just becoming this horrible, scary epidemic.
Well, one of the reasons why I think it is, and I just wanted to touch on this a little bit, is now as a society, I really believe that we're not talking about abstinence much anymore. We're talking about harm reduction. We're talking about let's give the addict, let's give the alcoholic an excuse, so to speak, to continue using, because we're going to give opioid addicts, we're going to put you on methadone, or we're going to put you on Suboxone, or we're going to put you on another opioid-based medication, because now everybody's talking about let's just keep them alive. Right. And I agree with that as far as keeping somebody alive, but we cannot just continue to keep people on these other medications because they become addicted to those medications as well. And so as a recovering addict, if you gave me that excuse to use that, I'm going to use both then. I'm going to use that drug that supposedly is going to help me, but I'm also going to continue to use the other opioid I was using, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so I think that, again, as a society right here in Fresno and California, we have to start addressing the topic of abstinence. And I know I'm going to get some feedback on that one, but again, you ask any of us in long-term recovery, there's nothing wrong with abstinence.
Yeah. Well, I think it's as we bring up, Jim, often is with what Flint's saying, and yes, we want to meet someone where they're at, but the ultimate desire is to get you unstrapped from anything, yes. Like Flint's talked about, if it's methadone, you can't travel, and if you forgot it, you're extra in trouble. So I think, when we bring up that we're both supporters of abstinence, because I've done it, you've done it, it's successful, it's about living a life beyond your 2 blocks. And if I wanted to stay in my 2 blocks, I would have stayed in my addiction. And I think that's a lot of maybe where people with us like, you guys are heartless. No, we're not heartless. We want you to ultimately have a life. We want you to build this life where all of a sudden, guess what I'm doing? I'm traveling to the Florida Keys for vacation.
To me, it's seeing it in close to home. If you love somebody and you really want to help somebody, you want to help them come to that aha moment where they basically make the commitment, I have the courage and the ability to get free. Mm-hmm. That's what happened in our situation. Right. And you know what? You got free.
Right.
And I mean, that's freedom.
You bet it is.
And not to have some other crutch. And the crazy thing about this is that moment in time when we said, Sharon and I said, we've had enough. When our family member that was married, still is, said, that's it, I can't do this anymore.
Right.
And so he started to strip away the excuse makers. Mm-hmm. And sometimes parents can be the biggest excuse maker, which basically is, that's our boy, he's not like that. I mean, it's just somebody got to him, and and we literally had to emotionally and verbally shake him by the shoulders and say, look what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You're better than this. You can change this. And there's a whole army of folks that love you and around you. We're going to help you get through it.
Right.
And he resisted at first, and then he kind of fell backwards a little bit, and then finally, when he knew that if he didn't get free, if he didn't live up to what we knew he could be, that he was going to lose everything that he loved. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it shook him enough, and today he's utterly a different person.
Right.
Absolutely a different person.
And that's why I have been on that bandwagon for so long, as far as with families saying, look, we, the addict, the alcoholic, we have to get to that point to where we know everything is going to be gone here in a matter of minutes if we don't make a change. Now, there are some people out there that did not make the change. And
I know.
And they're still out there. Not everybody dies from their addiction, by the way. Whether it's opioids, alcohol, it doesn't matter. That addiction can last 10 years, 15 years, 30 years, 40 years, and live in that mess for that entire time. That's why we're such proponents of families laying down that hard line and saying, look, this is it, because if you don't, we're not anymore going to support you in your addiction. We will support you in your recovery. We will help you all the way down the line in your recovery, but we're not going to support you in your addiction.
We
chaos.
also have found in our case that when our loved one made that change and held on to it for a good long period of time and was emotionally and psychologically and physically and frankly spiritually transformed, changed, that's when we and our daughter, when our family, when his family came around him when he came home successfully and they reunited and we were all there. We welcomed him as if he was the prodigal son.
Right.
We rejoiced. We had dinner together. We killed a fatted calf. Right? And as much as you hold them to this high standard, and you are relentless in, I don't like necessarily the word shaming, but you got to bring them to some realization of the mirror. Look in the mirror.
Yeah.
But when they have demonstrated it, then I think you cheer them on. You're around them.
Of course.
You're grateful. They're not isolated anymore. We're not thinking, where is he today? We know he's at work. He's at home. He's taking the kids to school. Right? He is utterly changed. And so, sometimes people ask, what advice do I have? Well, I think I've given it. Which basically says, if you love them enough in the beginning, hold them to this high standard of what you know they can be. When they were sober, they were good people.
Right.
Yeah. But boy, when that stuff got a hold of them, my God, they turned into, and you wonder why. And I also think that there are psychological issues that are undercurrents in all of this as well. Right? The self-esteem issues, right? And so what are we doing? We're building his self-esteem up.
Right.
Because he has demonstrated that he has made that change.
Right.
And he has purposefully stayed in jobs that take advantage of his culinary expertise. But it ain't anywhere near a bar. It's nowhere near the alcohol.
Right.
He's preparing and working in a field that he enjoys. He's doing it well, has a good job here locally. And, I think he has really straightened up. I really do. And I look, we're going to, now it is, we're beside him and our arms around him, and we're going to help him any way we can.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, that just does us here, just does our hearts so good to hear that, because there's so many cases, especially during this time of the year, where we know there are people out there that are still suffering and still in their addiction, and their families are sitting there going, why? Why? There's moms that are home crying themselves asleep at night, praying to God for God to save their child, and I saw that post the other day, when somebody said that, and then all of a sudden I started thinking, it's not only the moms, it's dads, it's brothers, it's sisters, it's aunts, it's uncles, it's grandparents,
and it's the addicts' children too,
and it's the addicts' children,
which is the biggest heartbreaker of it all.
Where's
Daddy?
Where's Daddy? You bet.
And Daddy, by the way, Daddy's back.
Daddy's back.
And was it last night or the night before? Yeah, we had our grandkids and our kids live like 20 minutes from each other and 10 minutes away from us, and also regularly we have the two little ones over for a sleepover, and they were there, and our loved one came to pick them up, and I mean, it was like Daddy's home.
Yeah.
And I mean, they embraced each other, and those two children who, while he was in the pit, would sleep over with us, and they'd toss and they'd turn, and they'd wake up with nightmares, and they would run to Mimi's arms, and it was Daddy's not there.
Right.
And and my daughter was wise enough to tell the kids the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew that Daddy was sick.
Right.
And they knew that it was with alcohol.
Right.
And to see him now on our front porch, and those little kids are just running into his arms.
Yeah.
And he is running. He's come down on his one knee. And
Yeah.
this is, I think this is what redemption looks like.
Yeah, it does. Because I'll tell you what, I remember that one day where he was on the front porch, and that was nothing like he's on the front porch today. I mean, phew.
I think that was the stunning thing, because I have that night seared in my memory.
I bet.
Because it was a tough decision to basically try in as forceful a way as I knew how to have him recognize the consequences of the state he is in right now. Mm-hmm. But then I said, but you're better than that. You know that. Mm-hmm. You're better than that. Why can't you find the good person in you and stand up and not lean on this junk? Look what it's done to you. You're on the street. He was in soiled clothes.
Soiled clothes, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And I just, and so you say, if I can be an encouragement to anybody that may be in a similar circumstance, you are a great asset.
Thank you.
A great counselor. Reach out to pain, but also understand that the loved ones around have a heavy responsibility to be the actualizers of answered prayer. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, God doesn't come down and burn a bush in their front yard. Right?
Right.
What does he do?
I've never seen him do it. Right.
Me neither.
Exactly.
But what does he do? He puts that love in our hearts. Yeah. He says to me and to Sharon and to others, you're my hands, you're my heart, you're my voice, you're my peace, you're my redemption. Mm-hmm. Now go be the person you want to be and you say you are. Mm-hmm. In these tough times, people around addicts have the opportunity to reflect and demonstrate the goodness of who they are and how different they are from the reflection that is in this person in the addiction. And have an aspiration. I was hoping at some point, our loved one would be thinking, I want to be like Jim. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? Or I want to be like Sharon. Mm-hmm. For the sake of my kids, I've got to figure this out.
Well, I've always said this.
Thank God he has.
Yeah. But I've always said this about us, the addict and the alcoholic. When yes, we have to do it for ourselves. There's no question about that. But when we get clean for others, and particularly our families and our kids, our in-laws, mm-hmm. our own parents, it has a tendency to really heal our hearts faster.
Yes.
I firmly believe that. Me looking back and the wreckage that I caused with my family, and when I finally got clean that last time in 2001, man, my boys' pictures were right there. And I mean that picture in my brain, that I needed to, I'm doing it for me, but I also needed to do it for them because I didn't want them going through the rest of their life knowing that their dad possibly died from an overdose or wound up on the street somewhere.
And
just wasn't going to do it.
One other important fact in all of this that gives us such confidence that he's serious about it. He will not miss an opportunity to be a witness for others to be able to hear his story. I mean, he's helping out with the program. He
Right.
gives speeches and he's on Zooms with addicts and
That's fantastic.
and to watch him prepare, to write notes,
Yeah.
and also to compare the texts we were getting when he was in the pit to the texts we are getting today.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a changed young man.
It's different of night and day.
Changed young man.
Yeah.
Grateful, loving. He's got the strength, and also he doesn't want to disappoint people who love him dearly.
Right.
And he doesn't want to be in that pit again.
Right.
And he is doing the kinds of things that recovered addicts that can stay recovered do.
Right.
And he's staying in the program. He's got mentors that he taps. He has no compunction about reaching to the resources
Yep.
that he has.
He's working the program.
He's working the program.
Yeah.
That says serious,
Yes.
directed intention.
Yes.
And I think that's why he's made such good choices to basically, in the food industry. You and I talked about this. It's just alcohol city.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And he has made the choice.
Yeah.
And the other thing he decided was that he was going to work a shift, the early shift, 6 a.m. I don't know, to like noon or 2 or something like that. You know why? So he could be with the family.
Mm-hmm.
So he would be there when the kids came home from school.
Yeah.
So he
Nice.
could be the dad, right? And he also wanted to make sure that the place that he worked, I mean, good pay, it's a good benefits, but they care about their employees, and it's obvious. And so he also has, the opportunity to have time with his kids when his kids need him.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a choice that he made.
Right.
But, that means 6 o'clock in the morning. He's up at 5 and he's going doing his thing. But, Lindsay, she's up.
Right.
She interesting thing with Lindsay is she's a mom and
Yeah.
a stay-at-home mom, but also she has found a place. She's also Cordon Bleu trained, and she writes for a very large food blog.
New Perceptions North, the premier drug and alcohol treatment and recovery center in Central California. A full continuum of medically supervised, top quality care with programs for detox, inpatient residential treatment with dual diagnosis, intensive outpatient treatment, sober living, support groups, and more. With 50 plus years of combined experience and sobriety, Flindt Anderson and Thelma Gatlin Wilson provide adult men and women with the highest caliber of professional health care, treating each client with compassion and respect, and a safe, comfortable environment. To begin the process of recovery, to proudly create and sustain a life without addiction, call 559-978-1507 or visit newperceptionsnorth.com.
To see, your children grow up, go through the tough times, find themselves, lean into their faith and lean into the people that love them, and then to watch them come through it,
Mm-hmm.
and to watch a victory happening. I can't tell you. So I guess what I'm saying is to those viewing and watching, if you're in a situation like this, there's help at pain,
Yep.
and there is every reason to believe that if you listen to the professionals and you listen to those who've gone through it, and you heed their advice and be a part of getting them out of that pit and standing up on their own 2 feet, and instead of always dragging themselves through life, they're looking up.
Yeah.
Their shoulders are back. They understand. They got through this and they won it. I really believe that our loved one in this instance can face all kinds of other challenges because he faced this one down and he learned how to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate it all began with that phone call in the middle of the night.
Yeah, thank you.
And
glad I could help.
You were a lifesaver, and I didn't. I was at. What do I do?
Right.
What do I do? I'm angry.
Right.
The police were in the front.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember.
But what I wanted to do was to be what he needed, and what I could provide, and you helped me write that script, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
My pleasure. I just love that story.
Well, I'm going to change the direction here, Mr. Patterson, because I always love the analogy of the great white shark in Amityville, Jaws. I look at you as a Chief Brody here in this situation because you've been through it, you see it, you've identified it, maybe much like Flindt, people weren't listening. But now with the position that you're in and getting legislation going, how do you feel with the work that you're doing to help others that maybe don't have the same situation as your loved one to have support around it, and how the impact?
Our children are adopted, all three. And people have asked, well, we were married for 10 years. We had some fertility issues, and then BJ came. He's Vietnamese. He was orphaned in Vietnam, and then Jason's our middle son, who was from a 16-year-old birth mother, Lindsay from a 37-year-old birth mother. And as a result of those adoptions, I'm a different man than what I would have been without it. Mm-hmm. I can see every child as my child now. You don't have to gin up sympathy and empathy and love and really the desire to use your place in life to try to make a difference. This comes naturally to me. It's kind of like I'm their dad. I mean, that has compelled me to do some fentanyl legislation we can talk about in a minute, but also we've got this fentanyl program that we passed, and Fresno County is doing a great job, and that is the example of how to do this in 6 other areas in the state of California. I also, I've done legislation, all the legislation for adoption, making it safer, easier, less complicated, the family's more secure in those adoptions. But also, I've done legislation that really helps survivors from sex trafficking clear records that are keeping them from their new life.
Right.
It's called vacatur. That came into effect a year ago this January, and the governor signed it, passed. Our office has been involved in helping the survivors get pro bono lawyers, because now what can happen because of the law, the courts have to adjudicate their vacatur in 90 days. Used to be, it could go on years, right? They got to adjudicate it in 90 days, and then when they're vacated, it comes off their record, and the courts are obligated then to get that information out to all of the reporting agencies and all that, so the record gets cleared. I just think, look, I'm in the minority up there. I don't make any bones about it, and yet I think the Lord has helped us find a niche, a place, and to use the seat in ways that maybe are helping those that others look at and kind of turn their back on. Yeah. My faith and our particular personal experiences through life, I can't turn my back on it.
Right.
Because in a way, if I turn my back on those kids, I'm turning my back on my kids. Mm-hmm. I see my kids in all of that.
Sure.
And that's one of the reasons why we're doing the Fentanyl Dealers Accountability Act. I'm hoping we can get some traction on that. Maybe we want to talk about that. And also the status of fentanyl legislation. Right. Something is happening in the state. And I don't know whether you have questions about that, or maybe some of the legislation.
What's the general tone in Sacramento right now on both sides of the aisle?
Yeah.
Is this something that, obviously it's getting traction and it's getting more and more traction.
Well, yeah. First of all, you don't get approval by the legislature for a special committee, a select committee on addiction, opioids, and fentanyl, without the okay of the Speaker of the Assembly.
Okay.
And that happened a year ago.
Right.
And I'm on that select committee. So we have a bipartisan, bicameral group of legislators who are really serious about this. And we also have the imprimatur of the leadership of the Assembly particularly. So that's point number one. Point number two is I've been there 10 years. This is my last 2 years, and then I'll be termed out in 2024. I've never seen as much focus on fentanyl and a variety of ways to go at it than I see now.
Right.
I think we could see 24 bills or so. I have one. I'm co-author of. It'll probably end up being a dozen more by the time January comes and we have them all put together and we put them over the desk. Right now, we haven't seen them put over the desk in that number, but that's because we still have time and we're working on them. And my Fentanyl Dealers Accountability Act is sort of like that. And I just think that it's there. I actually think that there's going to be a lot of interest in developing ways to fund the kinds of things that we need. We were talking about, I think before we went, on air, about having resources where regions can put up advertisements on TV and put up, advertisements on social media and things like that basically teach and warn and let people know. Yeah, we're seeing that happen. In fact, we've got a bill that will get funded, I think, this year, where we're going to have 6 of these that replicate what Fresno County has done in that space.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff going on. But I really think if we're going to get really serious about this, we really have to go after the dealers. And those dealers have to pay a consequence. And that's why the Fentanyl Dealers Accountability Act, we're working on it. I have to give a big shout out to Lisa Smitkamp, our DA. She is essentially crafting the details.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we found is there's this huge loophole in the law. Because if you have a big bag full of heroin, for example, you got this big killing factor, and that's a felony.
Right.
The problem is you could have 1,200 pills, and it won't get to the weight necessary to move it from misdemeanor to a felony.
Right.
That's what our bill will do.
Right.
We're trying to rationalize that there's a public safety history with heroin and those kinds of things, where if you've got enough weight, enough of it, well, so Lisa and her office, the last piece of this is to rationalize that so that we can say that the heroin as a felony with its kill capacity and the fentanyl kill capacity are equal.
Right.
And then we can make that a felony. And why I think that has the possibility is because, and Lisa has said this to us as we've worked through, the atmosphere in Sacramento will not allow us to put the casual user from a user periodically, they get caught with a little bit on them, and they have a felony. Well, that's not what's going to happen here.
Right.
The interesting thing is that dealers and the cartels and all of that, they have tons of this stuff, and if we can get the weight down right to where a little teeny gram has this kill capacity and it's sort of equal to this big lethal dosage of heroin, we're not going to touch the user because the user isn't going to have enough to even get to that because they don't even know they're ingesting it half the time. And so I think we've got a space here where we can say to those social justice types, and there's a lot of them up in Sacramento, we understand, but that's why we're moving it in this direction. The dealers and, these are the ones that have to know that they have a kill capacity that's equal to a bunch of heroin. And so that we're going to figure out what that weight is. In fact, Lisa showed me information where we had they caught somebody with 1,100 fentanyl pills laced with fentanyl. But
the M30s.
Yeah, but you couldn't get it to weigh a kilo. So I think kilo is the question here. You got a kilo of kill capacity here with the heroin or whatever. But if we can get a similar kill capacity for a small amount, then maybe we could see that the weight, although it's little, has this huge kill capacity.
Well, because we had a young man that Flindt had helped out, and he was using fentanyl, and he literally went online, I can't remember what is the overdose rate, and he would use up to that point. Right. He would push it, and it's only, 2 milligrams?
Right, something like that.
Yeah, so it's
a grain of salt.
Yeah, it's a small amount, so it's they're not.
So the needle I have to thread up in Sacramento now is that this ought to be a slam dunk. This shouldn't be, I shouldn't have to fight through the Public Safety Committee and the Assembly or try to get it off the floor, and over into the Senate. And so why I think there is hope here is because it won't touch the casual user.
Correct.
Because they can't possibly have in their possession enough to get to the weight of 2,000-3,000 pills.
Sure.
So we're waiting for the final draft language from Lisa's office because they're kind of the experts in all of this, and then we'll put this over the desk in January, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
My message to the ruling party as we go through that is we're not doing anything different than holding fentanyl dealers accountable like we're holding the heroin dealers accountable. Mm-hmm. The kill capacity is, but we've got to bring the weight down so that the kill capacity is recognized as substantial enough to be similar to what the heroin can do. And so why are we going to give the fentanyl dealer a break when we don't give the heroin dealer the break? So I think some of these members are going to be faced with a particularly compelling decision. Yeah. If it's not going to touch the user, and the users maybe we can get them help, maybe we can educate them out of it, maybe we can warn them. But those that know they're poisoning these people, the dealers that are doing it, they're going to be held to the same account, not a higher account, not a lower account, but the same account as the heroin dealer. Yeah. And I think that's justice. I think that's justice.
I think so, and I think the scary thing too, Flindt, tell me if you from your knowledge, is the scary thing about fentanyl, it doesn't last casually for very long.
It doesn't.
And often people, like you're saying, that one time and done. So it's, we've got to up the accountability, because everyone that I've talked to, you've obviously more that have used fentanyl, it goes from curiosity to an addiction pretty quick.
Yeah.
If they survive.
Yeah, it goes from curiosity to death real quick.
Yeah.
And so because I remember when we went up to Sacramento a number of years ago, and you proposed those 2 bills on longer jail sentences for drug dealers, and of course that didn't pass anything.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call Parents and Addicts in Need at 559-579-1551 or check us out online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media at Pain Nonprofit. Please subscribe to the podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. To donate, please click the link in the description and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.
Are we looking at a long period of time here before we can get something in place to put these guys away?
Yeah, this is not adding time. What we're saying is we've got to get to a weight situation where the fentanyl dealer has to, we're not adding time, but it's the felony that the heroin dealer faces.
Yeah.
And so look, I know this is, a fine threading of a needle. I mean, I wish we could make fentanyl dealers have to pay the price for murder, because I mean,
right.
It's poison.
That's what it is. Right.
But you know something? I've learned, if I can get 2/3 of the loaf, half the loaf, I'm making some progress.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so the unintended value here for the ones that don't want to give anybody, a longer sentence, is that we're not making it a longer sentence. We're not making it a longer sentence for the heroin dealer. We're trying to basically say, let's not let the fentanyl dealer off the hook simply because he's got this killing drug that is so small and so that they're driving truckloads through the loophole.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's do justice as well as do mercy.
Yeah, it's just just classifying the act different, because of the misdemeanors. We've seen it and we've heard it, and Lisa shared with us. So they're in and out over and over and over and over.
Right.
Laughing literally at cops. I'll be out tomorrow.
Right. Right.
So
when we're talking about the 6 counties in California now, and that funding that is going to become available, is that more for awareness piece that maybe nonprofits like ours are going to be able to get out there to people to let them know that there's treatment available, that there's help available? Why don't you explain that to everybody?
What we have done is we have replicated what Fresno County is doing. So Fresno County does have a law enforcement piece of it, right? You have the sheriff's department that's involved. You have the police department involved. When there is an overdose, they track
the 14
where they got it and try to stop it. So the money can be used for enforcement. It can be used for information. It can be used for media, and it will basically be $500,000 annually. For 6 of them, it's got a $3 million price tag. And the next step is the law was signed, and now the governor has the responsibility to recognize that and place it in his budget. We hope that we will see that. I think they will. I serve on the large budget committee, and so we'll have a good idea of whether or not it's there or whether we're going to have to ask for a budget augmentation. We'll see. But in the atmosphere that's up in Sacramento right now, I really think that $3 million it's budget dust for the state of California.
It is.
But $500,000 a year goes a long way to seeing to it that Fresno County can have the resources rather than having to spend them out of the county budget or the police department budget or other places. So it offsets some of that. So I think we're going to do okay with it. But I think the atmospherics in Sacramento with fentanyl really changed. And I think the most important thing we've seen is this select committee. It's bipartisan, it's bicameral, and it's serious.
That's good.
I mean, it's really serious.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic.
And we're seeing the product of an awful lot of that.
Yeah.
And so being on that membership, my staff, my ledge director, we are sensing what's happening underneath the radar because we're not really in session yet in January. I talked to my ledge director yesterday. I mean, we think there could be 20, 25 bills that in one way or another touch fentanyl.
Right.
Now, my guess is a lot of them will be common to each other, which means there'll be some consolidation over time, right? So, I consolidated one of my bills last session with another member's bill. I think it was the catalytic converter stuff that we were going after. Why? Because my bill was similar to his bill, and we put them together,
Sure.
and we became joint authors. That's kind of the way things are going to work up there, I think, on the fentanyl as well. But I think we're as serious as can be.
Well, I think this, and I'm going to bring this up because this is where we have to get more serious. And that is with all these bills. I'm hoping there is something, because we have to be able to get out to our citizens where they can go for help and where they can go for treatment. And all of this awareness piece that we're doing everywhere, we're not letting the citizens of the state of California know where they can go. Now, I'm going to back that up just a hair. We do tell folks, you can call Fresno County Behavioral Health. Jim, that's not treatment. That is and I love Fresno County Behavioral Health. But when somebody calls there, they're put on hold. You're not guaranteed that somebody's actually going to even pick up the phone.
Mm-hmm.
They do not know where to refer people to other than one or two local county-run programs that may or may not be able to help them because they are so full all the time. Yeah. The one thing we are, again, I'm going to repeat myself, the one thing we are not doing is we are not giving people the adequate information on where to go to get treatment, because the counties, no matter if it's Fresno County, Stanislaus County, Monterey, wherever it is, they do not want to partner with private treatment facilities. And it's the private treatment facilities that are going to make more of an impact on our communities than the county-run programs.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know. A couple of weeks back on KMJ, I made an announcement about what I'm going to do when I come home.
Right.
Which is run for Board of Supervisors.
Right.
For the seat in which I've lived for, ever.
Right.
40 years. And part of the reason is exactly what you've just outlined here. Mm-hmm. I believe that the years I've spent in the legislature, because the counties are sort of this sub-organization of the state. And so transportation, I have resources, I have connections, I have relationships with healthcare, with hospitals, with public safety, right? I mean, and the county has lots of options, and so one of the reasons that I announced is because of things like this.
Right.
I can bring a perspective, 8 years as mayor and 12 years in the legislature, that says, imagine what we could do if.
Yeah.
If I get elected, I don't intend to go in and point fingers.
Right.
I intend to go in and put my arm around these other members. And by the way, they're all my friends.
Mm-hmm.
And to say, imagine what we could do if. How about if we? And so I think I could be in a position in the county to bring folks like you in and to have them talk with you or suggest how we could inform the CAO about the private organizations that do this. Why wouldn't you want, as a county, to hand off that kind of work to those who do it well, so that you could be able to have, with limited resources and staffing, opportunities in other areas that may not have as much a connection with the quality of care and information and all that in the private sector.
Right.
So I'm a firm believer that when you have government touch it, all of the idiosyncrasies of politics and governance and who gets it and who doesn't turns it into a wrestling match of interests.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't get help to anybody.
No.
And so I believe that the years in the mayor's office, the years up in Sacramento, blend together to have not only experience in areas like this, but thoughtful consideration of what might be.
Right.
I'm a Reagan Republican.
Yep, that's
I'm
me.
a Reagan Republican. Why? Because Ronald Reagan was aspirational. He was forward-looking. Yes, he would say, "We got some problems here," when he ran for president. But how often would he pivot and say, "But imagine what could be if."
Yes.
I wanted to follow that man,
Right.
because he inspired me. He didn't hunker me down saying, "Oh my, we'll never get out of this big mess."
Right.
So I really believe that leadership has to be aspirational. It has to be forward-looking. It also has to be grounded in fact and what is known.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be willing to be independent of the competing forces that try to grab at government. And to be able to step back and say, we're going to be the referee.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be the one that says, test it. So let's compete with it. And I think that I will be able to, if I'm elected, I'm going to be able to suggest ways that we can change the paradigm of what a large bureaucratic organization can do and can't do.
Right.
And I'll just say it this way. One of the things I've learned in Sacramento is that our bureaucracies don't have discretion. Mm. And if they don't have discretion, it's one size fits all. You do it our way or hit the road.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I want the county to understand that from the leadership of the board, we encourage your discretion in this. Where did I learn this? I learned this in the legislation that I've been running for adoptions. We have practice and we have law. The interesting thing is, in adoption, they have taken some discretion to form those families, and yet they were a little bit squishy with the law. Well, what do? We rationalize their practice with the law, so third parties don't come in and try to break that family apart. I think there's a lesson there to be learned about every bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm.
And my history in these 10 years, going on the 12, is that state bureaucracies are more interested in protecting themselves than they are in serving the people they say they care about. That's the nature of bureaucracies.
Right.
If we allow bureaucracies the discretion, if what the CAO of the county would say, why don't we look at ways to bring in the private sector, the ones that do it over and over again and do it well? Mm-hmm. Again, I learned when I was mayor, for example. I sat on the transportation commission of the city. Back then, we built 168, 41 north and south, the 180 crosstown. We did it on budget and on time. Well, what were we able to do? Discretion. So when Caltrans made a good bid and they did it on time, wonderful, that's great. But you know what we also did? We gave it to private sector.
Yeah, absolutely, you did.
Mm-hmm. We gave it to private sector contractors, and guess who came in under bid and with quality construction more often than not than the state operation. So bureaucracies and political leaders should not be afraid of what amounts to competition.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
It's the best way for good people who do it well to be tested and then rewarded.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that in some of these areas with respect to transportation, I think the county could be using the Bechtels or some of these others. I think when you come to this area, Payne ought to be at the forefront in this. And so I think that's one of the reasons I've thought, you know what, the next phase is to take the experience from Sacramento, bring it home, and apply it to the county, because there is so much overlap and interconnectedness between how the county does things and what the state requires it to do. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to inquire about how much discretion can the county bureaucracies, and that's going to be an adoption as well. You know, I mean, why if we're backlogged on adoptions in the county, why can't we send those adoption applications to the private adoption organizations in Fresno and let them work through the paperwork and all of that? Why have people suffer without help? Because the bureaucracy is insufficient to the capacity.
Exactly.
And that's what I think where I can be helpful.
Sure. You know, and I know we've talked about this in the last few weeks, but I think this is something that's going to have to be addressed again, is the insurance side of this thing. Because, you know, let's face it, Medi-Cal just does not cut it when it comes to paying for treatment for somebody. The private insurance companies out there, they are actually almost no help in this, because now they're cutting down the time that they're allowing people to be in treatment, when we all know, especially with opioid addicts, but alcoholics as well, and meth addicts, that they need more time in treatment. And so we're just, it's almost like we're fighting a losing battle here, because we want to give people the correct amount of time. We want to be able to help them, but privately, our hands are tied, because we have to still keep our doors open, and we can't do that unless we get some help from.
Well, you know, we've talked about it. I'm on your side. We're going to be Ian is looking at ways.
Yep.
You know, we'll see how that can happen.
Right.
And again, you know, I'm on the budget committee. Been there for 10 years. I also served for a good period of time on the health committee. I'm now on a subcommittee for health. I mean, I know these plans. I could pick up I could go to my cell phone right now and have like the third or fourth person in the health plan, or their principal contract lobbyist, and talk to them. And I've done that. And I've said, well, you know, why aren't you saying yes to this?
Right.
It is the plans are pretty powerful up in Sacramento. Let's just admit to that. But at the same time, I have seen when the legislature rises up, they require the plans to do some things that actually are that they don't want to do, because it's more costly, and they think that the premiums go up and all of that. So again, this is part of the experience and the history and the interaction that I've had with state level interests that have an absolute direct consequence to Fresno County.
Right.
And so I think I bring some experience and some tools in my own toolkit that I think can be helpful. And again, I'm not. The voters are going to make that final decision. But you know, I mean, the people that I have gotten to know over the years on that board, Buddy and Sal Quintero and Brian Pacheco and you know, Nathan Magzig, those folks have been friends and quite frankly, you know, they've been sort of mentors to me, and we sort of mentored each other and all of that. You know, 2 of them are Republicans, 2 of them are Democrats, and I've supported all 4 because they're the right people for the job. And part of my enthusiasm about coming back and serving on the Board of Supervisors, frankly, is I've gotten to know these folks, and I've heard their concerns and their passion and all of that. And I like what I hear. And I think we're headed in a good direction. But we've got to have a little more willingness to push the bureaucracies to, if you can, decentralize and have private operations that are known commodities, good at what they do. And why is that important? It lifts the burden from the county with limited resources, that allows the county to take what resources they were doing to, you know, call them back a week later.
Right, exactly.
To do something else. So I recognize the fact that bureaucracies are overburdened. There's no question about it. But there are ways to free up the bureaucracies from having to say no, wait, or maybe, by saying, why don't you go to the private sector and have them be a part of this? because they do it well, right?
Right.
So, well, I still have 2 years. I still want to work on the fentanyl. I think we've got to be working on water. I think we've certainly got to be working on electricity. I mean, we cannot have rolling blackouts, and we can't have PG&E bills that are just skyrocketing. I just got a notice from my ledge director, Ian, that PG&E has a great big additional rate increase in front of the PUC because they want to be able to recoup the costs of mitigating the fires that they started in the first place.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
So, this is the kind of stuff that we deal with up there.
Yeah.
Don't get me on that road, Jim. This is topics that gets me fired up, as Flindt knows.
I know. But anyway, so again, in the bigger picture of things, I'm not ready to ride off into the sunset.
Right.
I'm not,
We're not ready for you to ride off into the sunset yet.
And my grandpa and my dad worked until they could not work any longer because they were so aged.
Yeah.
That made them really good grandpas and dads.
Right.
It really did. They had something to do, right? And they enjoyed what they were doing, and they were challenged by what they were doing. And they would draw me into that challenge and all that. And I guess what I'm grateful for is over the years, I have never been in a position of responsibility or work where I would wake up on a Monday morning and say, it's Monday. Wednesday would come and I'd say, hump day is finally here.
Right.
And Friday would come, TGIF. I mean, honestly, and I think this is your life too.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
Yeah, it is.
7 days a week.
Right.
Right. And yes, we get some time off and weekend, all of that. But the sun comes up on a Monday, man, I'm ready to go.
I'm ready to go.
I'm ready to go. And Wednesday just happens to be another day in the week. And Friday, okay, we're going to kind of wrap things,
right.
End of the week. And what's Monday coming? Talk to staff. What do you got Monday going?
Yeah. I don't know what I'd do if I mean, I would have no idea. In fact, it was last Friday. It just reminded me of this. I got a call from KC24, like at 4:00 in the afternoon. They said, "Hey, can we do an interview with you tonight about 7:30?" And it's a Friday night. Yeah. And I said, well, yeah, of course. I mean, it's like I go home and Kathy's there. I go, I'm out. Okay, I'm out on a Friday night at 7:30. She goes, yeah, I go.
And then I get the text, hey, make sure you get that social media
together. That's right.
We've also been blessed. Sharon has been, for I think it's 25 years now, the ministry support director for Prison Fellowship, which was the Chuck Colson operation. Right. And she does it out of the house. They decentralized out of offices, and they're working there. And they had to drop a good-sized modem into it for the bandwidth that Sharon uses. And so she's had her life of fulfillment, and I've had my life of fulfillment. Well, once you get, I'm going to use the word, addicted to that kind of fulfillment, I can understand why my dad and my grandpa did it until they just couldn't do it anymore.
Sure.
And they were better people as a result of it. So you know what? I sitting around and Monday morning comes and do I tinker in the garden today? Do I go bowling?
Right.
No.
Sounds miserable.
No.
But
it sounds miserable.
I think you nailed something there, Jim. And for us 12-step people, the servitude, not self-serving, that's an ego. The servitude, and what you shared about yourself, your wife, your family overall, is when we get to that gift of, wow, I have a purpose in serving others and really making this better, which our theme, and everybody knows it, the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's community. Yeah. And so when you get that, there's something powerful in it. It's like...
I'd like to kind of piggyback on that. I don't want to get too religified, but one of the things that sort of compels me in all of this is what I've called a civic ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And when we serve 3,000 people who had trouble with their EDD and they're on their last few dollars, That's a civic ministry.
Sure.
When we help people unwind bureaucracies and we can steer them to places where they can get help, I feel like that's an answer to prayer. We are their answer to prayer. And I have been so fortunate to have staff members who want to work with me, who have that same kind of faith perspective, that they're there as an extension of who they are spiritually. Right. That brings really, really good people around you. And so, like I said, I've got 2 years, and we're going to run through the finish line as strong as we can. Then I'm going to come home, and I'll be on the 2024 ballot.
There it is. There it is. By the way, and you've got a great staff. I'm not kidding. Like I do here. I mean, your staff is fully committed to you. They're committed to everything that you stand for. I know them, and I just think the world of them.
Well, again, what we've tried to do is, unlike most politicians, we've built an operation, we built a staff, and we built service that isn't about me.
Yeah.
And I've called it different by design. Yes, I am, the heart and soul and the face and the person, but I can't do it without a whole group of people. And I've been fortunate enough to have them. And we do things very differently. I had 30 years of having radio stations.
Right.
The junk that politicians would send to our newsroom. I, me, look at me, I, a news release that is 5 paragraphs. They could have done it in 5 sentences.
Right.
And over the years, to talk to my news directors, and they'd get the thing and say, "Jim, look at this," and it goes right into the wastebasket. We're very different. It's us, we together. Imagine what we're trying to do here. Right. And the other thing is, if you notice the manner in which we do social media and the photography we use, it isn't just me standing up there with everybody and I'm the center of the.
Right.
I mean, okay, here's who I gave the certificate to, and I'm cheerleading here. But we do an awful lot of photography over my shoulder, bringing our audience into the group of people that we're interacting with and celebrating, right? And working with. And I think that's part of the difference.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the look. I overperform my registration, so the reality is that in all of my elections, I've had Democrats and Independents vote for me, and I think that look, Democrats in our area are sometimes pretty different than Democrats in the Bay Area or L.A. For example, I mean, Brian Pacheco's a Democrat. He's my dear friend,
right?
And I've supported him every time he got elected. I've given him money, but he's what I would say is a JFK Democrat.
Yeah,
okay. Sure. I'm a Reagan Republican. There was a time when JFK Democrats and Reagan Republicans got along, and did a lot of good stuff together. Now those days seem to be gone. But I think the people that I've represented over these years, I hope that they have seen somebody who is doing this because he has a heart for people and has a willingness to work hard, develop staff, so that we can help constituents when nobody else can.
Right.
And so if anybody watching or listening, if you've got difficulty with a state bureaucracy, we have got really good people that can unwind it for you.
They do.
And the other day, got a call from community hospitals, and they are just overwhelmed right now. All the hospitals up and down the state, you got you got a lot of issues, and they could not get CDPH to really connect with them and help them out and understand what they were doing. My office, on my behalf, called CDPH and said, "Look, we got an issue here." I think the next day or the day after, CDPH was in town and they were visiting community hospital and trying to understand their staff shortages and what, if anything, the state could do. That's the behind the scenes kind of work and the kind of credibility we've developed over time.
Right.
And so when CDPH calls, my office is familiar to the bureaucracies up and down the state. And they know that I'm serious about it. And you better help, or you might have a call from the Sacramento Bee asking why not. You learn to use the levers.
Yes, you do.
You
Yes,
learn
you
to
do.
use the levers. And it's not for me.
Right.
Those levers are there for me to use for people who have been caught up in circumstances where the bureaucracies have failed them.
Right.
And so, I'll take all that experience and, we'll ask the voters, do you want me to stay around or you want to retire me? So
Right. There it is.
We'll see.
We're going to want you here. That's
We'll
for
see,
sure.
yeah.
We're going to want you here.
Mr. Anderson.
Well, Jim, as always, thank you. You know what? You are truly a dear friend, and the things that you do and have done for not only this community but the state is amazing. You are a man of character.
Thank you.
Like seriously, one of the finest men I know. Of character, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time and all the things your staff has done for us, and it's just awesome what you do. And my friend, thank you so much. I appreciate you,
Flindt. We found each other at a time when we both needed each other.
Yeah.
And if I helped you, I hope you know you helped me, and you helped my loved ones.
I do. Thank you, my friend.
That's a gift that we'll treasure forever.
You bet.
And I appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
Good
Appreciate
to be with you.
Thank you.
And thank you, of course, for listening on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or on YouTube. And don't forget, if you want to get involved with Pain or find out more about our services, of course, we do provide Narcan, free training for organizations here in the Fresno area. Go to painnonprofit.org.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call Parents and Addicts in Need at 559-579-1551 or check us out online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media at Pain Nonprofit. Please subscribe to the podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. To donate, please click the link in the description and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.
This podcast contains the views and opinions of hosts and their guests to the show. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only. And because each person is sharing their unique perspective, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast and website are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. Privacy is of the utmost importance to us. For those wishing anonymity, people, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast have been changed to protect confidentiality at the request of certain guests. This website or podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or website. In no way does listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient relationship. If you find any errors in any of the content of this podcast or blogs, please send a message through the contact page.